The premiere of President Curtis proves almost immediately that this is much more than a simple Rick and Morty spin-off. Although Rick Sanchez has made President Andre Curtis look foolish more than once in the original series, this episode finally gives Curtis the opportunity to lead his own story. What follows is an outrageous conspiracy involving the CIA, a forgotten moon mission, political blackmail, and one of the strangest government secrets the franchise has introduced so far. By the time the episode reaches its ending, Curtis has done something nobody expected. He manages to outsmart the CIA without relying on Rick to solve the problem for him. Instead, he wins by making a decision that completely destroys his enemy's leverage. The episode begins with what appears to be an ordinary day at the White House. However, everything changes after a classified CIA recording is stolen. At first, nobody understands why the agency is so desperate to recover the tape. As the investigation unfolds, Curtis, his newly appointed Chief of Staff Ro Banks, and his trusted security chief Francis O'Doyle discover that the recording hides one of the darkest secrets in American history. Many years earlier, the CIA secretly launched an experiment that never became public. Instead of sending trained astronauts to establish a permanent presence on the moon, the agency sent a genetically engineered baby named Adam. The plan was as disturbing as it sounds. Adam was designed to survive in the harsh lunar environment. Raised entirely inside a biodome, he spent more than 6 decades believing he was carrying out a heroic mission for his country. To prevent him from questioning his existence, the CIA manipulated him throughout his entire life. They sent fake recordings supposedly made by former presidents, constantly assuring Adam that one day he would return to Earth, receive a hero's welcome, and even become President of the United States. From Adam's perspective, every sacrifice had meaning. In reality, he had simply been abandoned. The agency never intended to bring him home. Once Curtis learns the truth, the mission changes completely. Recovering the tape is no longer the most important objective. Saving Adam becomes the real goal. Curtis, Banks, and O'Doyle realize they must reach the moon before the CIA eliminates Adam to erase all evidence of the experiment. The problem is that they can no longer trust NASA. If the CIA has infiltrated government agencies on Earth, then using official channels would almost certainly alert their enemies. That leaves Curtis with only one realistic option. He visits the one person capable of getting him to the moon immediately: Rick Sanchez. The appearance is brief, but it serves an important purpose. Rather than taking over the story, Rick simply lends Curtis one of his spare spaceships. It is a clever way of keeping the series connected to Rick and Morty without allowing Rick himself to solve the entire conflict. Morty also appears briefly, but the funniest moment comes when Rick casually breaks the fourth wall. He tells Morty that this new adventure lasts 10 episodes, openly acknowledging the existence of the spin-off inside the shared universe. It is exactly the kind of self-aware humor fans expect from the franchise. Once Curtis and his team arrive on the moon, they finally meet Adam. Instead of being a terrifying monster, Adam is actually a tragic figure. Everything he knows has been carefully manufactured by the CIA. His hopes, dreams, ambitions, and even his understanding of humanity are based on lies. When he discovers the truth, his entire world collapses. Curtis eventually prevents Adam from escaping to Earth, but stopping him does not end the crisis. The CIA still has one final advantage. They know something embarrassing about Curtis. Earlier in the episode, viewers learn that Curtis is deeply concerned with public perception. He wants to be respected as president. He worries constantly about appearing weak or foolish. The CIA exploits exactly that insecurity. They threaten to release footage exposing an embarrassing incident involving Curtis at the White House gym. Although the event has nothing to do with national security, it would almost certainly become a public scandal. The agency assumes Curtis will do anything to prevent that humiliation. In exchange for keeping the footage secret, they demand that Adam be handed over to them. For a brief moment, it appears the CIA has won. Banks strongly disagrees with giving in. She argues that allowing blackmail to succeed will only encourage future corruption. She even urges Curtis to expose. Then the episode quietly introduces another mystery that many viewers may have overlooked. Near the ending, Banks looks at a photograph of a young child celebrating a 10th birthday. Nothing is explained. A few moments later, O'Doyle is shown carrying the exact same photograph while preparing his specialized ammunition. The series deliberately avoids explaining why both characters possess it. The shared photograph strongly suggests that Banks and O'Doyle have a personal history that neither has discussed. Perhaps they once worked together on another classified mission. Perhaps both characters lost someone important. Or perhaps the child somehow connects to another government experiment similar to Adam. At this stage, the series provides no clear answers. Instead, it plants an intriguing mystery that will likely become one of the season's central storylines. The episode also uses Adam's story to explore a surprisingly emotional theme beneath all of the absurd comedy. Adam represents someone whose entire identity has been created by people in power. Every dream he possesses was manufactured to keep him obedient. The tragedy is not simply that he spent decades trapped on the moon. The real tragedy is that he never had the opportunity to choose his own life. Curtis recognizes this, which explains why saving Adam becomes more important than protecting his own reputation. For someone often portrayed as loud, stubborn, and easily frustrated, Curtis displays genuine compassion throughout the mission. That emotional depth helps distinguish this series from Rick and Morty. While the original show often focuses on Rick's intelligence and cynicism, President Curtis appears more interested in leadership, responsibility, and the difficult choices required when protecting others. The ending of Episode 1 successfully establishes those themes. Curtis defeats the CIA not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but by understanding that integrity can sometimes be more powerful than secrecy. Banks proves herself as an indispensable partner capable of matching Curtis at every step. O'Doyle begins developing into more than simply the president's bodyguard. Adam survives the conspiracy that defined his entire existence. Meanwhile, the mysterious photograph hints that an even bigger story may already be unfolding behind the scenes. For a premiere episode, President Curtis accomplishes exactly what it needed to do. It expands the Rick and Morty universe, while confidently standing on its own, introducing compelling new characters, balancing outrageous science fiction with political satire, and giving President Curtis an opportunity to become far more than the loud politician fans thought they already knew. Most importantly, the finale demonstrates that Curtis does not need Rick Sanchez to save the day. This time, he proves he is capable of doing it himself, and that makes the future of the series far more exciting than anyone could have expected.